place where you're looking to figure out how to heal after narcissistic abuse? Today I have a guest, Dr. Kaszina, and she is a brilliant lady. I am so in awe of all of her work, and we're going to talk about how do we heal? What differences do we both see in how people, what they need to do, what they need to heal? It's going to be a great conversation. So this is Tracy Malone, the founder of NarcissistAbuseSupport.com. I'm a coach and I'm here to help you, but let's get in and talk to Annie. Welcome, Annie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited that you're here.
Well, it's lovely to be speaking with you today, Tracy. I'm really excited too.
Yay. Well, we are going to broach the subject of healing from narcissistic abuse. And, people come in every stage. So either they're just learning what a narcissist is, or they've figured it out and they're not hyper vigilant about gobbling up every book that they can and watching every video, and they're ready to heal. But for you, when do you think people should start worrying and thinking about the healing versus the education factor?
Well, I can't see why you wouldn't start thinking about healing right from the start. I think it's really important to acknowledge that you have been deeply wounded. And healing is about healing that wound. Education helps you know what wounded you, but I think healing should start from the very beginning. Certainly that was one of the first things on my mind. Oh, good God, I've been in an abusive relationship. I didn't know. How do I heal? I didn't like to feel broken. I didn't want to be stuck in that place.
And I think that's exactly where people make the mistake of going, I'll heal after. And to me, I believe that you begin to heal as you read the books, as you listen to videos. You're sitting there, you're identifying the wounded things, right? The fear, the anger, the hurt, the rejection. You're just going through this list of things that, in addition to hyper focusing on how narcissists ruin holidays, for example, it's like, okay, how many videos are you going to watch about that? Let's start to think about that as much as how much they will ruin Valentine's Day.
Absolutely. And I think, when we are in an abusive relationship, we learn to numb ourselves and numb ourselves and numb ourselves. And when we say, well, I'll put my healing on the back burner until, it's more layers of numbness. And the more layers of numbness we build, the harder it is to actually get back in there and feel our emotions and work with them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if you think there's different situations which empower people to move down the recovery ladder faster. So if you were, say, the dumpee, you were dumped, you were betrayed, you were, they want a divorce and it's a shock to you. That's a different, funnel going into the learning, because you've got the betrayal factor. You've got the oh no, I had no idea, we were not happy factor, right? And then you've got the people where they've been planning their escape. They have the means to get away, and they seem to be in a much higher level of being able to recover faster because it was their idea. Do you find that as well?
Yes, I do. I like to think that when the dumpees get a picture of what happened, when they get clarity, they can move fast. But it's getting to that point.
Yeah, it's just another hurdle. I think the betrayal always, it's always that, who does that? What kind of person? I actually have a mug back here that I was like, who does that? People say it every day when they're just in that shock, deer in the headlights. They need answers, right? They need that validation, which is what we do.
Absolutely.
We're like, okay, well, that's this and that's this, and you explain these things, and then the light bulbs start to go off, and maybe they go home and read a 18-page article on gaslighting because they've never heard that word. But it empowers them when they have the language connected to the actual memories, and that's the validation that they need, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, Yeah, I think it's incredibly powerful. I know that for me, when I didn't know what it was, I was just drifting in an uncharted sea.
Hmm.
The language gives you the compass.
Yeah, yeah. So, so how do you
Yeah.
tell people where do you start people on their recovery path?
I start them exactly where they are.
Mhm.
Um, and this is one of the things I constantly say to people who have had bad experiences of therapy or whatever, that you always have to start with the person exactly where they are, not where you might like them to be or where they might like to be. And sometimes when I start working with a client, it is not their big issues that they bring. It can be something more immediate, because yes, I've got to heal from narcissistic abuse, but this has happened. And it never seems to matter where we start from, because everything feeds into those big issues.
Mhm.
The daily problems that they face, like how am I going to make a decision on whether I sell the house or not, which they might think is a financial decision, obviously has a financial element, but the uncertainty, the anxiety, the need to do it right away comes from that place of, I don't know who I am. I don't know if I'm on shifting sands all the time. I don't know how to do my life. So I start wherever we are with validation. It's always listening, validation.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
That's what I find people need most of,
Yeah, I
you
think
know.
I think that is the key. That's you have to understand, and that's the validation.
Mm,
I actually have, and I make joke of it, but I have a rubber stamp, and I go,
mm-hmm.
we're not actually diagnosing them. It's your
Yeah,
feelings, your
absolutely.
what you're going through. The name is giving us a book that you can read. It's giving you
Yes.
material to understand what happened. We're not going to diagnose them, but we don't need to. We just need to
Yeah.
see if they check all these things and you're experiencing this, then here's how we unpack those layers. Because as I find, and I'm sure you do too, many victims of narcissistic abuse tend to either have something in their past, like a family, or they've been in a relationship like this that was a little different. This one's covert, the other one was so grandiose
Mm,
that
mm,
they were like, I'll never have that one again. And then they no mistakenly take the covert, more, subdued, kind, open face,
yeah.
charming one. And they're not expecting that. They thought, okay, I'm going the complete opposite of what I had before. This couldn't possibly be. Do you have that happen as well?
Totally. Totally. Occasionally you get someone who said, well, I had a really, happy, secure childhood. And it often turns out that that was not the case. Behind every victim who turns up, there tends to be a very, very long chain of abuse. It runs in families, often through generations after generations.
Mhm.
And it is so normal that and that was me too, can't see that there is a different world out there, because that is the world they know. It's always been that way, that they've been taught to accommodate to abuse. Abuse is normal in that world.
And
Yeah.
the tactics are not abuse, right? For me, I was taught that ghosting was our family vacation. Oh, they'll be back. Don't worry about it. That's just what happens in families. And
Yeah.
would talk to my parents and go, but Teresa's family's really nice and they have Thanksgiving together. Don't compare us to other families. And
Yes.
I was quick to
Yes.
shut down to not expect what other families got.
Yes. I got all of that. And my parents always said, we're very normal. We're just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't quite work that out. I knew they were very different, but I thought, well, they must believe that. They must know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like their parents. That
Mm-hmm.
was the only way in which they were like other people. But it was interesting an interesting experience of living in a parallel universe, you know, with this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way we do it. This is the right way. It was all crazy.
Yeah, the voices of, you know, things like good girls don't do this, or
Yeah,
give to others before you give to yourself, don't be selfish, and all of
yeah,
the recordings that really made us narc bait, not being able to set boundaries or knowing what they even were, because why would your narc parent teach you to empower yourself, because they were
precisely.
you would have empowered yourself against.
Narc parents preach unselfishness because that's what works for them. They have a plan for your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So
They really
let's
do.
ask about wounds. You know, I find that most people, as we dig and we look at not only their past and the relationship they might have come to us with, but they have trust issues.
How
They
could they not?
exactly everything that they have had in their life shows them why they shouldn't trust.
Mm.
Yeah. What other kind of wounds do you feel that people, the victims of narcissistic abuse, have?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of abandonment and rejection in that interesting place where those two meet.
Mm-hmm.
Not feeling good enough.
Mm-hmm.
This crazy, weird, kind of excluded from the mass of humanity thing,
Mm-hmm.
which can sometimes play out in looking at people and going, yeah, I know other people can be happy, but it's not like that for me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this whole thing of being emotionally marginalized, not good enough, other than people, abandoned, rejecting, never expecting anything good to happen to them, never expecting anything good to last, and being trained to take the blame for everything that happens,
Mm-hmm.
you know, basically on the same continent as them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think shame and guilt, you know, when we are,
Yeah, absolutely.
you feel
Yes.
guilty and then, you know, forgive, you know, the guilt and the shame of our family's not like others. Let's keep that quiet. That's what kept us quiet about the abuse growing up, because we would shame the family.
Yeah, shame was a biggie. It was my mother's constant refrain about anything. You should be ashamed of yourself. So I was. I
Mhm.
didn't even ask her what I needed to be ashamed for. It was just so inherent in guilt. You know, I
Mhm.
was fed guilt with my mother's milk virtually. And they're so, those are so incredibly omnipresent that they didn't even spring to mind. Yes, you know, they're just, yeah. Of course, shame and guilt, they are always there
Yeah. And
in
it
that kind of
just
environment.
helps, I think, it helps to understand even the difference between shame and guilt. When I ask clients that, they're just like, oh, I don't really know what the difference is, you know, and
Really? Gosh.
it's fascinating, because again, if our parents didn't teach us emotional resilience or even talk about this instead of feeding it to us, like you said, then how would we know the difference, right? And shame
Mm,
is I am bad. Guilt is I did something bad. And most people just take on that shame. I am bad because of all the guilt that has sunk them into the quicksand of their life. And so to get that clarified and go, something was bad or you did something bad, and I'm not saying in this case any victim did, it is
mm,
just that the narcissist accused you of these things. So okay, I'm guilty, I shouldn't have done that, I'll apologize, I'll make it better, I'll work harder. And we're not going to ever get anywhere, because we are then taking it on and shaming ourselves. We're the bad ones. We can't have a real relationship, and the negative thought patterns that get recorded into our head, that I'm not good enough and I don't really deserve anything better than this. It's okay, I'll settle on this because I'm not really worthy of
mm.
real life that the rest of the world seems to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about
It's a,
boundaries? Boundaries.
what? Boundaries are these things that they learn in other families which we were not privy to. I find that most people come to me and they say, I know I need boundaries. I say, yeah. Do you know what a boundary is? A boundary is telling people what I don't like. No, not exactly. We were brought up in a home where we had no boundaries. Abusive parents overstep the mark every which way. You're not allowed your thoughts, you're not allowed your feelings, you're not allowed anything. And you're told exactly what to think, and you are rubbished and shamed and blamed if you don't think it. Mm-hmm. You are not allowed to speak with your own voice. So you hear this thing about boundaries, which are meant to be really good. Mm-hmm. And it's a totally foreign world. So when I teach boundaries, I always start from teaching people a framework for where, why, and how you might put a boundary in place that they might understand before we go into you do this, you do that, and you do the other. But first of all, they need a structure to understand where they would put boundaries, or where they would put boundaries in certain senses. Like most people have boundaries, or a very primitive boundary with money. You don't give someone money just because they ask you to, or they say to you, can I have your credit card? And you say no. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of thing that you can start to translate into other areas of life. Mm-hmm. So it's literally creating something that they can make sense of before they can start to have boundaries. And then acknowledging that it is incredibly hard to start saying no to people who you've always said yes to. So again, there has to be a whole piece of work involved in making that possible for them. Yeah. So boundaries are huge.
It's absolutely imperative, because if you were raised as we're talking about, where there were no boundaries, then we reach a place where we don't even know what they do, how to enforce them. And it's for the people who are still with a narcissist. Narcissists are, boundary breakers. They are really not going to honor people's boundaries. So it's learning to set boundaries, and new people in your life, and friends and family, and testing out to get your strength up. And for people that are getting out there and dating, I'm like, this is the best test of whether the person's a narcissist or not. Set those boundaries early and see. Totally. Listen, do they not listen, right? This is changing your future, and not necessarily going backwards, because we can't undo what's happened. We can only move forward and live for today and tomorrow. And so we don't let people or keep people in our life that we're not comfortable setting a boundary with. If you're not comfortable setting a boundary with someone, that's a red flag. I'm afraid if I say something, they won't like me, or they won't stay, right. That's a flag.
Big time. Yeah. That's already, for me, that's all about the unspoken contract that you have with people right from the beginning. So that person has possibly already kind of told them that it's my way or the highway. Mm-hmm. Not in words, but they kind of know it from previous experience. Yeah. And it's also watching them overstep boundaries, isn't it? I love it when you hear about people, a man takes a woman out for dinner and she says, I'll order for you. And nobody would ever do that for me, because I like my food. But seriously, that's overstepping boundaries. Mm-hmm. A boundary for me is all about people acknowledging, this is where I finish, this is where you begin. Mm-hmm. And there is this respectful space, and we meet where we meet. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But there has to be an awful lot of respect.
Yeah. And I think for victims of abuse as well, with boundaries, they're boundary averse. they are uncomfortable when someone sets one on them because it's so unfamiliar. So there's like a decoding of their mind that has to happen to go, it's actually really good that someone sets a boundary on you. That means they've got them and you get to give them back. You get to set them and you get to accept them. And if you are okay with what they're saying, you know, there's so many places where we would say, that's not where I want to go. When victims have boundaries set upon them, it feels foreign because we are so averse to it. We didn't set them. And so when someone does it to us, we almost feel like we've done something bad. Oh no, I did something bad. And then they're kind of correcting me because it's the mental stuff that the parents put in our head or that the narc put in our head that you don't have the right to those boundaries. So when someone sets it, it sets off victims in a different way. Do you find that as well?
I can't say I've experienced that a lot. I haven't heard that a lot from clients, no.
See, I teach a boundary class in my groups, and we ask that, and they're just like, yeah, I just feel so guilty when someone sets it on me that I've done something bad. And we have to untangle that and be like, it's
right.
Someone sets it. It's not an insult to you. It's them just laying out what works for them and them giving you rules to be in their life. So it's sort of deprogramming them to know it's okay that someone sets a boundary on you.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think for me, that's a slight languaging issue. I would, if a client said to me, I've done something bad, I'd say, oh, tell me about it, you know, and understand and look at it probably from a different perspective. But yeah.
It's a big part of recovery for me. And, you know, fear, I think I have my first chapter of my book is on fear. We've got to learn to control that and manage it. Tell me how you talk about fear.
Oh, again, I mean, fear is such an obvious one, but survivors grow up. I mean, people who've been in abusive relationships come out of them, particularly if it's in childhood, believing that a very, very high level of fear and anxiety, which are, of course, two core wounds, are normal. They think that that is the way it works. They don't even understand how chronically afraid they are. And a lot of the healing work is creating that safe space so that they can start to have an experience of being safe and being able to be themselves safely and state boundaries safely, do whatever it is. But they have to come back to safety. They've got to find an experience of safety for themselves. Yeah. I mean, fear is such a biggie, and then the triggers for fear are so very many. And you've got to find this way of actually coming back to yourself when that happens. Fear, anxiety, and actually despair, stroke, catastrophizing. Again, incredibly normal for someone who's been through that, and incredibly damaging, because you can want to do something, and when the catastrophizing kicks in, you can just give up totally until you start to come back and have the wherewithal to work with yourself and say, hey, that was actually then, this is now. I'm not that person. I can walk myself safely through this scenario. And if I can't walk myself safely, I'll find someone who can walk me through it safely. Yeah.
I feel that fear makes really bad decisions. When you are full of fear, we stay in a relationship longer than we should because we don't have a way out. But fear makes us make choices. I can look back at my marriage and go, I definitely was afraid of taking care of myself, and that was used against me later. I didn't know I could do it all myself. So that fear just talked to me and whispered, you know what, he'll take care of you. Or, all of these like recordings, the catastrophizing I am famous for. And
Really?
oh my God, I'm like a recovering catastrophizer, but my son is the one who points it out. And he's like, okay, mom, we just don't have heat. We're not being evicted, because my brain is like, they're gonna get mad at us. Like,
Yeah,
and
I know.
it's like, nope, and I catch it.
Yeah.
It's about, if you've got something like catastrophizing built into your DNA, you have to
Mm.
understand, wait, I'm doing that. There's no truth to that happening. Where's my brain going? And we have to learn to slow down, accept the reality of that isn't true, and move on from there. But we have to face our fears, and often do it anyway, right? It's one of my favorite books on fear, is Feel the Fear,
Mm.
Do It Anyway. But we sometimes just have to do things afraid. Fear might not
Well,
go away. We have to push through it and go, that wasn't so bad, I did it. That helps you get
mm.
rid of the fear by facing it.
You know, you may be the world's greatest catastrophizer. Maybe I've been the world's greatest coward. When I was introduced, when I bought Feel the Fear and Read Do It Anyway, I couldn't even finish it. It was just, oh, I can't read this. She doesn't understand. But I, since I have a very high tolerance for, a high level of fear naturally, I actually like to bring the fear right down before I do anything. And I like to do that for clients as well, because it just works better.
Mhm.
And one of the ways that always works is by getting away from the black and white thinking. Fear is always, if we don't do this, something dreadful will happen,
Mhm.
which was childhood, which was an abusive marriage. And coming back to this place of, this could happen, that could happen, what else could happen?
Mhm.
What else could I create?
Mhm.
And that kind of, for me, takes me out of the fear space, and seems to do the same for my clients too. This remembering that there's more to life than black and white.
Mhm.
There are 50 shades of gray,
Yeah.
and many, many other colors besides. So
Yeah.
it's always, I think, for me, it's really helpful to just get out of that state.
And I've been doing a lot for years and years of Course in Miracles, which is
Mm,
looking at it from fear or love.
yeah.
And, just these little reminders just
Yeah.
put you out and go, oh, and I'll tell you this little story. Last weekend, I was sick and laying on the couch, and there was an advertisement for Les Miserables, and that's my favorite
Mm.
play. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go by myself. It's exciting, and I want the very best seat. I just picked the very best seat, but I bought it, and then the tickets came, and I said to myself, the fear like kicked in, and I went, wait a second, like I didn't look at the map. Is this 9 from the left, or am I like,
Yes.
no? And I started to panic. And then I just stopped for a second. It was a momentary thing, and I'm like, why does my brain think that? I'm in the 4th row. Does it matter if I'm on the left or on the right or in the middle? I'm in the 4th row. I love it, right? I had to take that, like our brain goes to these places, and they can be huge things, or they can be little things like, you should have looked at the map, Tracy. Why didn't you see if it was in the middle or in the, and I just realized that's the way my body and my mind is programmed. But within seconds, I was like, oh, I love it. It's okay. No matter where it is, I'm there. That's my dream, right? So we have to realize that it's not just the big things that fear comes in for. It's little things. It's
Oh,
I
totally.
buy the right milk, little things like that are so stupid, but our fear recordings can play into and weave into our daily lives as well.
Absolutely.
Be able to
And it's so important to remember that you are actually a grown-up woman, and that you've done so many more difficult things.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's the greatest things that can trip us up. It really is.
Yeah. So tell me anything else that you think that victims need to do to heal.
Oh, I think victims need to start laughing. I really do. For me, laughter is the most important thing, starting to see the humor in everything, and including in their idiotic ex-partners. And narcissists are toxic, they're dreadful. Some are physically violent as well, and that's not funny. But they are also incredibly bad jokes. And seriously,
Mhm.
I mean, these people think the sun shines out of their backsides.
Yeah.
Really? And starting to laugh at just how pathetic they are. They are pathetic excuses for human beings. They're enormous emotional toddlers.
Mhm.
And what they do is so pathetic. I was reminded of something the other day which I'd completely forgotten. Someone said to me that her abusive husband wasn't violent, but he used to barricade her in a room. And I remember my husband doing that. I was in my office and he sort of comes in, says his, poisonous tuppenny halfpenny's worth, slams the door and puts a few chairs against it and storms off. What kind of a moron, who was a well-paid professional at the time, what kind of a moron does that stuff?
Mhm.
It was mildly inconvenient taking the chairs down, but that's ridiculous. And starting to laugh at this stuff. Yes, exactly. Laughter, I think, is incredibly powerful for bringing everything down to size.
Yeah.
And
I have
yeah.
a friend who's a comedian, and I met her because I went to a comedy show, and the whole gig, the whole thing was about her narcissistic husband and how, she would
Mm,
be so afraid before he came home that she would
mm,
be weeping and like making sure there was nothing, because he would find a speck of dirt on the floor and make it into a thing and fight.
yeah.
And so her whole entire show is just about the stupidity. She goes,
Yeah.
so finally, before he came home, I'm just throwing shit on the floor. She just it was awesome. And I ended up having to go, or getting to go, to court with her, and she's featured in my book for a contempt of court and getting some things done. But it's such a powerful thing to laugh at the
Mm,
humor of that. I have a video with her that she makes light of every stupid thing that meant a lot. And in the beginning, victims aren't going to be able to hold on to that wasn't funny. And but when you find the humor in it,
mm,
it has lost its power. It doesn't hold you. It doesn't stick to you like Velcro.
absolutely.
It's like, yeah, I have a
Absolutely.
thing in my book, which I'm going to see if I can hold up my card, that I call narcissists dumbasses.
I go for moron. Yes.
A chapter going, of course they're going to do it. They're a dumbass. They're going to keep doing it like a little hamster on the wheel. They're going to go over and do it again and again. You just
Mm,
go, of course they're going to do it, instead of going, oh, I can't believe they did it again. Of course they're a dumbass. They're going to keep doing it. They don't have another trick. This is act one. They don't have anything else. So,
mm,
finding the humor in it and belittling the importance of what they're doing by calling them a dumbass, if only that just makes it not as, oh my God, this is happening to me. But yeah, whatever. Of course you're going to do that. Got any other tricks, is what people end up saying. And that empowers them to not let
yeah.
hurt them and hold it.
Yeah. Absolutely. It brings things down to size, very much so. I can remember during my early days in recovery, as part of a women's group, and me being me, I naturally hosted them all for a meal in my house, gourmet meal, and we sat there and we ended up exchanging the most irreverent anecdotes about our repulsive and often violent exes, and we were all sitting there cackling at what we came out with, and it was such a great feel-good lunch. I mean, we were all very raw, but the laughter actually shrunk all our pain and our fear right down, and it was very empowering.
Yeah,
So I think that's a great thing to do.
Absolutely. I started a group. In fact, this upcoming Monday, so the end of February 2023, which they'll see this video maybe years later, will be my 7-year anniversary since my narcissist had me arrested. And when I was arrested by him, I learned the next day, someone said, he's gaslighting you, look that up. And so I started my own group because I needed the help. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'll find people that get this. And I just started a group. And 7 years later, there's a core of us. There's like 10 women, and they go out every single weekend. I go out with them once a month because I just don't have the time they do. But it's shows, it's comedy clubs. We've been to, just all kinds of fun stuff that it just changes the dynamic. I mean, we're 7 years out, so everyone's pretty much healed and giving back in some way to the community.
Fantastic.
But it is just like those ladies get me more than the friends I've had for 20 years do. And so it's finding support is another huge thing in healing.
Absolutely.
And there's support groups all over the country, as well as in Europe. And it's just about finding, like you said, that lunch with other people that get it. It's going to help you heal because you're not alone when you learn that you're not alone. So Facebook groups and things like that are really good to get you into the healing mode, the way to go.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's, as you were alluding to, it is such a glorious journey, this journey of healing. Yes, I was just listening to Gabor Mate today, and he was talking about sort of the very unpleasant experiences that allow us to grow. Well, narcissistic abuse would rate quite high along that, but nobody wants to go through it. But the journey of healing is an amazingly rewarding and personally enriching one. It really is.
Yeah, it is. Did we forget anything?
I'm sure we did. Because there is so much to say. Yeah, it is.
Grieving. People have to understand the grieving cycle could be the anger, the depression, and it rotates. When they think they're getting healed, then they have a trigger and they either get angry or sad again. They think they're going down the rabbit hole. I'm like, no, you're just in the cycle. You've got to hit anger. That trigger is something you need to understand that made you angry or made you sad. You need to understand those triggers and learn to get them, a little less power than they have for you. But as you cycle through the grieving cycle, it's like, that's normal. And they just go, okay, I get it now. It was a trigger. It was Christmas. It was our anniversary. It was something. Or they did some dumbass thing that triggered me. But it's part of the recovery. It's not.
Absolutely.
No matter how much work you do, you're going to have a dip. You're going to have a dip. And whether it's anger or whether it's bargaining, and, it's always part of the grieving cycle to not be afraid if you go down a little bit.
Absolutely. It's kind of part of being human. And the other thing, which is very big for me, which we haven't touched on, is acceptance. And I was thinking that a lot of us really don't like that word. I don't want to accept anymore because they confuse what they've been through. We confuse what we've been through, which is submission, forced submission, with acceptance. And acceptance is just about really owning yourself. Oh, wow, I have these emotions. I'm feeling incredibly afraid. Oh, I lost the plot today. Oh, I know that there are things that I need to do, but I don't think I can. I'm feeling really inadequate and unworthy. And accepting all of this and owning these are feelings, there is no judgment with them. And being able to accept yourself as a whole human being and be authentically yourself with your frailties, with your qualities, with nothing to prove to anybody, because you're just another person on this earth and you're connected in so many ways to so many others. And it's beautiful and peaceful. I think that's something we all really want to go towards, this acceptance, which includes accepting that it was appalling and they were appalling.
Mhm.
And it's not having to become all sweetness and light or dumb down any part of yourself or silence any part of yourself. It's just owning it
Yeah.
and being okay with it as you are with it in other people.
Yeah. And the opposite of acceptance is denial. So when we
Yeah.
hold on to the denial, we're being
Yes.
held on to them. Like, how could
Yes.
they do that? We've been married for 40 years. How could they? How could they? You know, and that's a denial, which is still not moving you to, yeah, it happened. It sucked. They were terrible. And I've learned and grown so much. So
Yeah.
it is part of the recovery to accept what happened and accept your role, accept your vulnerabilities, which is what we need to understand why. And if it's our family tie, if it's you know, just we had no boundaries and whatever it was, we have to see that, because then we can heal it. If we don't see it and it all becomes about them, and I'm not saying what they didn't do isn't horrible, but
It's horrible.
there are things that we have to come and accept about our role in it, whether it's just, I didn't even know, neither did you. We didn't know what a narcissist was, right? And I was in therapy for 7 years through my divorce, through this other bad guy,
Yeah.
and no one ever said the word. So how was I to know? That's what I have as a vulnerability is, man, I needed to read up and learn about this sort of thing, because it was so familiar that I would have kept on going. And every time I did, they got worse. They definitely, they amped the game. They knew what I tolerated. And it was just a matter of time before those things crept back in.
Totally. And I'm just thinking, as you're saying all of this, how can you know that someone's a narcissist when you've been brought up in that family and you've got your nose pressed up against that window pane and you can't see clearly? It is only when you can start to step back that you can make sense of it. And God bless the internet for making that kind of thing so easy now. It's so easy to find the information that you need. You know, you just have to start typing in, why does my husband shout at me all the time? Why does he act like he hates me or whatever? And you probably get the answers I was looking for. And so many people look for. And it's just easy now.
Oh, so much easier. You know, they've got things like Reddit, and you've got Facebook groups, and you've got YouTube University. I mean, it is just a gift to everyone. And I am so grateful that you are here today. Thank you so much, Annie.
Well,
it's been a pleasure.
It's been really great to talk to you. Thank you, Tracy.
You're welcome. How can people find out more information about you?
They can find out more about me either by going to my website, which is recoverfromemotionalabuse.com, and I've got a free blog there, which is long form information. And I've got a page on internet, which is at Dr._Annie PhD, where I'm constantly churning out information about narcissistic abuse and healing and all the aspects of it that I find fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. And she also has an amazing Instagram account for anybody out there. I love every morning. I just wake up and I'm just like, ooh, that's a good one. You're getting the message
so
out.
you. Well, I think you are too. We're doing it, and well, it's just a sign that there really is a good life after narcissistic abuse, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what we want everyone to hold on to. You know, the other side is quite lovely, and when you've done the healing, even though your life is not the same, you know, people give up and lose their house, they lose their stuff, they lose their friends, and the beginning again is so scary. But believe that the other side is going to be a beautiful place without the house, without the stuff that you might have lost. Just hold on to that, because that gets you through with love versus fear.
Absolutely. And we both catastrophize like crazy in our time. Would you have believed back then when you were catastrophizing that you could have the life you're having today?
No.
No,
No.
me neither.
And I love helping people. It is just the greatest gift. I know that all of my abuse, from marriages to boyfriends to family, has led me here. So with my experience in understanding this and all of the work I did to heal, I'm like, this is what God wants me to do. So I'm embracing it, and I just love my clients. So
Likewise. Yeah, working with one's clients, I think, is about helping amazing people become more amazing and more authentically themselves and more vibrant. And, you know, for me, that is the greatest gift on this earth. It's just a wonderful thing to be present at.
yeah, it's like watching a flower bloom, from the fear to the happiness and gratitude for, air. We don't even need to be grateful for anything other than what we can see in our vision, and that fills our heart with anything other than the fear. So thank you so much for being
Yeah,
here.
pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you found that helpful. Isn't she great? I just love her work. We will give you her link down below. Please follow her. And this is Tracy Malone. I look forward to seeing you again next time. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please go ahead or hit the like button. We'd like that too. So have a great day.